Thanks everyone for joining. First of all, apologies if there is noise on this side. My house is currently in the middle of a tropical storm, so the timing is impeccable as usual, the new normal, working from home. Yeah, I'd like to introduce this session, which is the first session where we are actually going to have a chat between Chawana and myself. We are going to be talking about the following topic, which is how to unleash the power of data to boost customer acquisition. So it's specifically going to be talking around the acquisition side of things, because I think in a lot of cases there's a lot of conversations around data, but not necessarily very clear on the actual application of that data. Quick introduction from my side as well. I'm the APAC lead for Relay 42, and Chawana is the MD of WORX Group in Thailand. She'll be doing a quick introduction on, well, herself and WORX, which she can probably do much better than I can. But I would like to say that WORX has been a really good partner of ours, really from the start of our efforts here in Asia, working with a mix of clients in different verticals that we will be talking about a bit more in our chat. Chawana, I'd like to pass the word to you, and maybe you can share something about yourself and WORX Group for those in the room who have not heard of you guys before.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am Chawana, Managing Director of WORX Group. We are actually the creative agency ranking number 6 in Asia. And then most of the client would know us as the creative agency because we are originally we are a creative agency. And then our DNA is very, very creative. So we position ourselves as a today agency. So what we do is that we do whatever that is become a solution for client business. That's fine. Today we would like to move ourselves, and then we are moving ourselves from being only creative agency to do a data solution for client. So that means we utilize data. We have media agencies sit in our company, and then we have a data solution. So that's why we make data very relevant to creative, and then we do the creativity to get the right data. Yeah. So yeah, that's the WORX.
You mentioned creative agency first, right? And then you actually started to add data later. I think that's really interesting because what you typically see in the market is a very clear split between the two, right? You see the creative agencies, or you see the media agencies who are generally, I would say, a bit more used to data and analytics rather than the creative agencies. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit on how you view the whole kind of shift into data, also from a creative perspective? Because I think that balance is quite interesting.
Because we are like creative agency, so we know the best how to make a story. So that means in terms of data, we need to have the right story to get the right data. And then we really need to have the right data to make the story relevant. So I think it's complement together between data and creativity. So that's why they're become a great solution for having a data into the creativity.
So basically, if I can summarize, you're saying that the data is not only to give you insight as to, for example, who you should target or what you should talk about or sell, but it's also really what that storytelling should be from a creative perspective. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
Okay, we can go into more detail in the next topics that we're going to cover. So what are you currently seeing with your clients in your market in general, but really in terms of using this data and creativity for customer acquisition. I think, again, it's very much for everyone here. It's very interesting to understand the application of the data. So if I have that data, what do I actually then do with it? And generally, what kind of trends are you seeing with your clients in this space?
Okay, because we operated in, like, we have an agency almost like 15 years, right? We see the changes or the trending of customer acquisition. What happened is that 10 years ago, when we talk about data, everyone and like most of the client refers to direct marketing. Yeah, that means we talked about sending a letter to customers' homes. We talk about sending a coupon voucher, and then we wait for consumer to open up the email. That's mostly data was talked in like 10 years ago. Yeah. So that means when we talk about data, client understood the data is like whatever in Excel sheet. Yeah. If we don't have Excel sheet, that means we don't have data. That's like a 10 years ago. I used to work for alcohol industry. Yeah. Like 10 years ago, we have to invest a lot of money to come up with a concert or the event just because we want to get a data. Yeah. That means the cost per acquisition was very high because you have to hire like an artist, you have to have a concert to get people registered for data. Yeah. But 10 years later, what happened is that data becomes like more casual, less difficult. And I think cost per acquisition is cheaper because data is everywhere. There is a signal of data. Whenever your consumers show the intent of purchase, you can consider it as a data. Yeah. So it's different, like from 10 years past. Yeah. So we don't have to rely on ourselves on open rate in the email anymore, because Thai people, they normally don't open the email, but they are very engaged in Facebook. Rather than waiting for them to open up the email, you just need to send whatever relevant to them to the Facebook, because it's already like engaging platform they are engaging with. So I think, like to put it very simple, I think data it's getting easier, yeah, and cheaper to have. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. I think what I find interesting is you mentioned that example of concerts, right? Organizing concerts, where it's interesting because I think a lot of times people would think of that as a brand exercise rather than an exercise to collect first-party data. But what's interesting is if you view that as a collection of first-party data, it is indeed very expensive, right? So when you talk to a brand, very often times, and I see this myself as well, where you talk about, a first-party data collection strategy, for example, get people to sign up with their email to a newsletter, for example, and we are willing to give away a coupon of $5 for every person that signs up. Just as an example, very often a brand responds saying, "Oh, but that's a lot of money, $5 per email." Right? But then to your example, if you go back, there are a lot of brands that were already spending a lot of money to obtain this data, but because it wasn't necessarily seen as a strategy to just obtain first-party data, the perception of the cost is very different. So I think it's an interesting shift where we kind of have to sort of re-educate, I would say, brands to understand that value of the first-party data and actually invest in programs to obtain that data again, right? I think another thing, what I also think is interesting, you mentioned a specific channel, right? You mentioned Facebook versus email, for example. I think what's also interesting, what we're seeing is that increasingly to obtain, but also kind of protect your customer data, if that might be the best word for this, I don't know. But you do need to look at this really through an omni-channel strategy. Because if you decide, for example, to spend all your money on Facebook to obtain the data there, it's Facebook's data, right?
Yeah,
so I'm curious, like how do you see that in conversations with your clients today? Like when you talk about, you know, a multi-channel approach to data and also journeys with customers.
Actually, omni-channel was famous, like it's starting famous 5 years ago, because clients trying to have like a online to offline. They try to get a data from a shopping mall, and then they try to get a data from call center, and they try to get a data from Facebook. But most of them, they rely on their data on other platforms. I don't know, maybe because they are the most powerful platform in Thailand, for example, let's say Facebook. So comparing to having their own website and having a Facebook fan page, they rather go to the Facebook fan page, which is at the end of the day, you still need to have your own platform, right? To build a concrete data, yeah.
So I guess if I can summarize, you're saying that it might seem intuitive to invest on what seems the easiest platform, right? But you're actually not collecting the most data from there. So you actually would need a mix, because you need also your own platforms, your own channels to be able to obtain the rich data. You were talking about signals earlier, right? I think for those in here who are not very comfortable with the term signals or have not really used it much or seen it much, I think it would be more applicable to, for example, customer behavior, right? And the behavior obviously outside of a channel such as Facebook is easier for you to obtain if it is you mentioned your call center, for example. But using that data effectively is often a challenge, right? So I think that brings me to the next question. What are those biggest challenges you currently are seeing with your clients with collecting and using this data? Because just now we're talking about the theory of why, you know, what are we even talking about? Why do we even need this data? What is the data we even are looking for? But what are the challenges you often see?
So actually, I summarize the challenges into 3 challenges. The first is knowledge. Like we have to accept that it's very low knowledge level in Thailand in terms of using a data. The second challenge is a data infrastructure. And then the third one is the implementator. Normally, there is no one which is knowledgeable enough in company department. So talking about the first challenge first, we are talking about the knowledge. I think there are a lot of clients who perceive that data is telephone number only, because like I have to say that 90% of the meeting that I went, and then I introduced the data and stuff, and then client asked, is that a telephone number or email address only? Yeah, that's the very most asked question. And then the second one is that there are a misunderstanding between CRM data and the potential data from all the signal area that you can find. So I think the knowledge will have to be filled. Yeah, that's the first challenge. And the second one is that when we are talking about infrastructure of data, like I told you before that, most of the Thai company, they rely on their data infrastructure on other platforms. So they have a Facebook, they have Twitter account, they have a Google platform, but without having a concrete own website. Or they perceive that having a mobile application is pain, so they rather not do it. Yeah. So that means when we don't have our own infrastructure, it's hard to do like profiling of the data. That's about the second challenge. Yeah. And the last challenge is that we want to have a better implementer who understand the data structure, who can analyze, who can plan a use case. Because normally in client company, they have someone who only do the boost post in the Facebook, but not a data related person. Yeah. So those are the challenges that I face with most of the clients that I talk to. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think the first point on knowledge and the third point of having a partner is directly related as well, right? Because I think if you don't have the knowledge in-house, then obviously it's very difficult to pull off. So you can buy, the most amazing solution. You can even buy the most amazing data strategy from a consulting partner, for example, but you don't really know what to do with it, right? You don't really know how to implement it, how to execute it, how to measure it, all of that. We see a lot as well. Obviously, we have slightly different conversations with our clients. I think us being more on the technology side and you being more on the service side. But I think fundamentally, the challenges are similar, if not the same, right? In the sense that we get these kind of challenges thrown at us all the time. So I think it's also, if you look at the perception of the concept of first-party data, right? You talk about CRM data. This is something we see a lot, especially across this region, very, very regularly, where people will, for example, brands will say, oh, but we only have 100,000 phone numbers or emails or anything like that, really kind of static CRM data. But then if you actually drill a bit deeper, you see that they have website visits, they have a lot of traffic of people who are actually looking at products, even though they don't buy them. A lot of people are actually researching products they even buy offline. So for example, insurance, we're seeing that a lot. Yes, they buy from the agent, but they actually go online more and more to compare, to research, and really just understand the offerings better. And if you are not tracking those kind of signals, you only have a limited picture of who you know, what they're doing, etc. And I think it's helping clients understand that they probably have a lot more ingredients at their disposal than they think. So I think it's that educational piece is probably a large part of your conversations as well in general, I assume. So how do you, so what you talked about use cases, I think that's super interesting as well, because again, we can talk about data till the end of days, but I think ultimately brands are interested in what is the value of activating that, right? What do I really get out of it? And how do I apply this data effectively? So if you look at the use case approach, right? How do you start with a client? So for example, a client says, okay, I'll give you the same scenario. I have 100,000 phone numbers. I mostly spend my money on Facebook. I don't know what to do. Where do I start? I don't even know if I have the right data or using the right channels. How do you typically engage with a client like that?
Basically, we ask client for if we can do a data auditing, because we always start ask, oh, how many type of client of data do you have? So let's start categorizing the data together. Oh, you already have the first party data because you are like a car company. So you have people who register and bought a car. So that can classify as the first party data. And then, oh, we can do like a second party data too, because we have a lot of partners. For example, we are trying to approach the company who do the like land, house, whole and a condo. Yeah. And then we ask them, oh, 10 years that you have been operated your business, you have like 30 partners website. Why don't you start building your second party data by plugging in the data and then to get to get those who are considering buying a house in those websites. Yeah, or we have tried to expand the third-party data, because you always have an event pop up, like for example, automotive events, so we can have a data from them. So we try to portray the picture that having a data is not that hard. So that's what we started doing now.
Okay, so essentially in this audit, you don't only look at what they have, but you also look at the whole ecosystem that they operate in. Is that correct? So you look at, like, if you work with partners, for example, maybe in the past, you know, they would get phone numbers from their partners, and that would add 5,000 phone numbers. But if they actually start using the second party data from their web traffic, as an example, then that could actually lead to much larger audiences to target, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
That's what we call a data ecosystem, because we have to build it, and then we have to define which type of data will give us the high intent to purchase, and then we have like a cluster of data.
Okay. That's super helpful. And how would you, because again, this chat today is really seeing how this can then be applied in terms of performance marketing. So how has that changed what you do with your clients? Like when a client would say, hey, I don't know, I'll give an example. I want to sell more houses, or I want to sell more cars. To put it really bluntly, what do I do now? So I've done my data audit, and then how do we get the business value out of that?
After you have a data auditing, and then you cluster your data into first, second, and third party data, right? And then next you have to start like thinking, not to think about demographic or psychographic, because it's like 10 years ago, or it's marketing 101, right? What you have to do is that you have to define your target into persona. Like back to purchasing funnel, who are in which stage, and then who are the hot lead, and then who are the warm and cold lead, and then put into persona. And then you design a use case, because the use case has different objectives. And then after that, you design the communication have a trigger message with it. And then you just start implement it. Because if you are like thinking about demographic, and then you will see, oh, this car, where I have to sell to a man, but actually women have a power to spend too. So it's not about a gender, right? Yeah.
Interesting. So I think it's a general shift to more behavioral focus than kind of static demographics, right? I think that's a general trend that we're seeing. I think what obviously then becomes a challenge, you know, when you look at the personas, and obviously what you ideally would want to do is you want to drill even further into the behavior of the individual person, right? Because you can still have an audience within a type of persona, but you would still want to go even further into, okay, you know, individual A is maybe slightly behaving differently than individual B.
Right.
So this is something that you would help your clients with, right? So once you've done this, what kind of results have you seen?
Okay, I would say it's like a magic tool, Jan, because I never seen the result like this before. We have been like experimented a lot in terms of performance marketing, in terms of result oriented, in terms of ROI or whatever it is. But we impressed by having a tool, because what happened is that for example, in financial industry, after we onboarding Relay 42, and then we get 84% decrease on cost per lead. Yeah, just within less than a month. Yeah.
And this is basically on an acquisition use case of like how would you, let me rephrase, how would you compare this to what they used to do? Not so much in numbers, but what are they doing, or what are you doing differently for them by using this technology?
Because before we doing this, we rely on the lead generation on only SEM, or we rely on only Google platform. So when it comes to Google SEM, you know it that most of the people who want to buy will go search. So you get a certain amount of people. But when you implement a lot of channel, and then you expand reach, and then you go a bit into the consideration stage, and then you will make it wider, and then you will get the qualifying like people, and then you serve the right and personalized conversation ad to them, and then you have a personalized promotion, and then after that the result is much better. So that's the different approach that we did with the two. Yeah.
If I can, I think if I can summarize it, you're basically saying look broader at your channels rather than just one. So for example, go beyond just Google search, really look at what they're doing across the whole set of channels you're using. And the other one is keyword is personalization. I think, to keep it really simple, you just want to get the right message to the right person, which is a bit different from, you know, taking a larger audience, a larger Google audience, and targeting them that way. I'm just mindful of time. I know we have about 3 more minutes left, which would also actually cover. Yeah, we talked quite a lot, which would also cover some Q&A. I don't know. I haven't seen any questions in the chat yet, but if there are any questions, please drop them in, and then we can always address them immediately. But I think just very, very briefly, while we wait for any of those, just to kind of wrap up with this, the last point, I think, how do you see this, the combination of technology and your services, right? What are kind of the important things to consider there?
I think the most important point that I want to make is that we have to have a smart tool, but we have to have a smart human to drive a tool, okay? That's the most important thing, because an intelligence tool will be very meaningless if you don't know how to use it, yeah? We have an experiment before, so let me give you an example by having a real case that happened, yeah? We used to like experience using the same tool, but different agency to run the tool. And the result is that it's very different buying two agency, because by having putting the right logic into the tool to get the tool learn and optimize for us. So you need to get the right people to start putting the condition into a tool. So it depends on the use case that you set. It depends on the objective that you define, and also depends on the message that you trigger for each stage too. So yeah, that means you really have to find the right one who have the right service to run the tool for you.
Okay, and I think this kind of goes back to the point you made earlier, right? If you don't have the knowledge base in-house, you can buy a great tool, but it's not going to, it's maybe only going to do so much because you don't actually have the experience on that tool, right? Okay, yeah. I think we don't have any direct questions in the chat. Again, if there's anything, please drop it in. But I think then really to kind of wrap up, why is this important now? Like, why should marketers care about this?
Oh, I think the simple answer is that you have to look around. You have to look around you. You have to look at your competitors if they're starting using the data, or you have to look into a big giant platform if you start collecting data. In Thailand, we have one of the chat application they collecting data, and then now they provide a lending business to consumer. So that means it could disrupt the personal loan, if I could say, right? Or I think one more important point is that you have to look at your consumer, because they are ruling the world, right? And then their behavior is changing like secondly. So that means if you don't move today, you will be very sad, because you cannot catch up anyone. Like you cannot catch up your competitor, you cannot catch up your consumer anymore. So better start it now, I think.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you very much, Chawana, for your time. I hope everyone enjoyed it. We are going to take a 5-minute, or actually 4-minute break now. Sorry about the slight overrun. We're going to start in 4 minutes with the next session, which will be with Kevin from Artifact, and we will be talking about first-party data and why it's a matter of survival. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in 4 minutes. Thank you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.